each week for the last 10 weeks or so, I've remembered to do a video for Torah in 2 minutes-ish, but I've remembered too late. This week I remembered, I think, barely in time. So I'm going to set aside all of the last 10 weeks worth of ideas, those I usually set on Friday night in this sanctuary here. So you got to show up live. But this week I remembered. But unique to this week, this past week is on Monday, the 12th of the month of Cheshvan. We marked the Yahrzeit of Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin. It comes up on the Gregorian calendar on November 4th, so between the two dates. Rabin, of course, was killed by a religious Jew who murdered the Prime Minister because he was convinced that this is what the Jewish tradition demanded of him, to act unilaterally and violently, to take somebody's life. Look, there's no getting around the fact that the Jewish tradition, like most others, you can find a way to justify just about any action if you take one little thing in isolation. In this instance, one of the things you can take in isolation comes from this week's Torah portion, right? Like Avraham Avinu. Abraham's willing to sacrifice his son Yitzhak, to bring his son and bind him on the altar and raise the knife to him, because he believes this is what God wants him to do. And there is real truth in that in order to have a society or a belief system that's going to withstand time, you need to be able to sacrifice for it. Otherwise, and anyone who's served in the armed forces know this, if people aren't willing to lay their lives on the line for something larger than themselves, you're not going to have anything. But that's not all there is to it. And that's also in this week's Torah portion. In this week's Torah portion, Vayera, we find Avraham arguing to spare the lives of people guilty of horrible crimes, because to punish them could result in the possible punishing of somebody who is innocent as well. Which is to say, there are two stories more or less side by side, Genesis 18, Genesis 22. One is act even violently for what you believe in. And right next to it is show mercy to those, even if it means sparing the guilty, because that's what God demands of us. So both at once. This is the sin of the murder of Rabin, in part, is to forget one of those stories. They exist together. Of course there are going to be times when things aren't going to be nice and rosy and sunny. Judaism isn't a pacifist religion. There's a time to kill, as the book of Kohelet says. And also, it's not only that. There's a default towards mercy and forgiveness. It is not upon any one person to make those decisions on their own. It is essential to work through proper legal channels to do it. That's part of what the murder of Rabin missed, and why, though he is sadly honored today by some misguided individuals in the Jewish community, why he rightly sits in prison, and God willing, we will be able, though it is 26 years since Rabin's assassination, to try and pick up his legacy, one of strength and one of forgiveness and one of looking forward to a time when there is enough of blood and tears. Shabbat Shalom.